Right. Well, welcome everyone. This is our Reiki Lifestyle podcast, and I'm here, of course, with Robin. Hi, Robin.
Hello. Hi, everyone.
We are so excited today to have Bruce Randall here as our guest. Hi, Bruce.
Well, hi, Colleen and Robin. I'm very happy to be here today.
I know, we're so glad. So, Bruce is actually a tech visionary and a Reiki master, and his work bridges the world of AI, consciousness, and healing. He has over 25 years of experience in cloud strategy and leadership at Oracle and AT&T, and he brings deep insight into AI-driven transformation and quantum computing. He's also a dedicated energy healer and meditation practitioner, and he offers a rare blend of spiritual awareness and technological expertise. And you can find him, we'll put this in the show notes, of course, but you can also find him right now on LinkedIn as Bruce Randall, and that's Randall. So, Bruce, again, we are so excited as we were talking before we started the recording with everyone. We had to finally start it because we had so much to talk about. As you know, we are really big advocates of AI and the developments in technology and how we can influence the electromagnetic fields, the frequencies of technology with Reiki energy. And so that has been a pretty important mission on our part. So we're excited to talk about it today and consciousness with it, but we really want to start with your story. So Reiki and technology, just go ahead and start wherever you feel called to start.
Sure. Oh, there's a few stories here that get melded together. When I was younger, I was a bodybuilder, you know, not a professional, but certainly, you know, my own at my own pace, but I got to be pretty big. And when I injured myself, I had to go to, a massage therapist. And there was a gentleman there that gave massage. His name was Paul. And I'd go in to see him, and he would do the best work, and he barely even touched me. And then when I couldn't get into him, I went to a Swedish massage, and they had their knees and elbows in me, and they beat me up pretty well. And I finally asked Paul, I said, how is it that you give the best healing and you barely even touch me? He said, well, I use Reiki in my massages. I said, well, what's that? And I was enamored by it because I said, I'd like to learn that. He said, sure. So, I went to a Reiki 1 class with he and Thomas Carr, who is the teacher and the mentor that I have now. And my wife, my son, who was, I think, probably 5 years old, and I took Reiki 1. And I thought it was fascinating, just the concepts. And then, a few years down the road, I had a life event and I said, okay, I'm going to go learn Reiki 2. So I went to learn Reiki 2, and there was about 5 people in the class. And they went around and we all introduced, and they said, I'm going to give you the name of somebody and the state they're in. And I want you to scan the teddy bear you brought. And mine was about 4 feet tall. I had the biggest teddy bear there, right? And 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 they said, scan the teddy bear and find out where where you feel the injuries are. So I was the last person, and they went around, everybody got the hip, the hip, the hip. And I said, well, I must have gotten it wrong. I said, I got the hip and the heart, and I felt kind of embarrassed. And he said, Bruce, he said, you're the only one that got it right. And I was dumbfounded. I said, what? And, it really struck me because I said, hey, I really can do this, because I was enamored by it, but I didn't know if I could actually do it. And so that gave me a big boost. And then, I went on with life, and then I had another, life event, and I said, okay, now I'm going to do Reiki 3. I'm going to become a master. And I took the master course, and that took me a Saturday for a year to get that certificate. And it was very detailed. It brought in a lot of the historical Reiki, things that you don't typically hear about, and some things in meditation, and it was very comprehensive course. So I got my master, and then I said to Tom, I said, I said, well, what's next? He said, well, we talked about meditation. He said, now you could start meditation. He said, it goes hand in hand. So then I started with meditation, and it took me a couple months to actually get it down. And I meditate to the Usui method. So you have to quiet your mind. And my mind raced all the time. So to try and quiet my mind, it was a big undertaking for me. And I finally accomplished that because once I came out of meditation, I had no idea what happened. Like no time had lapsed. And I said, how did that happen? He said, well, you went somewhere. I said, what? So that was the beginning, of the meditation. And since I've received both of those, I've had several life events along the way that really astounded me. One, there was an intervention and I saved a life, and I had no idea what I was doing until the event happened. And these are things that when you're connected with yourself by going inside, and the stronger you get that connection, things will come out either in thoughts or actions or events that are best for you if you put that out there that that's what you want and it works well with you know, with your lifestyle and your karma.
Wow. So you've been doing that for, did you say over 20 years?
It's about 14 years right now.
14 years.
Yeah.
Well, I was also kind of astounded when you said, "Oh, I got it down in a couple of months with the meditation." That's pretty quick.
Well, for me, it took forever because, I just couldn't quiet my mind. And then things started happening and I couldn't explain them. And I said, well, I guess this is what's supposed to happen. I have no idea what's happening, but that's part of learning. So you just go with it.
Well, then how did all of that lead into technology?
Sure. I was I was selling digital technology in Boston. We opened it up for AT&T. And then the company I was with went through a few, they were sold a few times, and the last time they said the managers aren't staying. And I said, okay, now it's time. So I went over to Oracle and I started to learn software. And it was premise at the time, but cloud came up during my early years. And I sold some of the first cloud programs. And then AI came into it and data science came into it. And I said, this is fascinating because I know what analytics software can do. But when you start putting these things in, it does it a lot better. And I started learning about that to understand so that I could sell it. And then, I had a number of years successful there. And then I saw this press release from Neuralink a few years ago, and they had put a chip on a brain and they had connected it with pins in the brain to connect with different parts of the brain. And they had a battery that got charged, and then that went into, it had an AI chip, and then it connected with the computer. And when Nolan, who was a quadriplegic, was working the computer with his thoughts, and he said, sometimes he said, the mouse moves before I think about it, but it always goes in the same spot where it's supposed to go. I said, so the mouse is moving before he even thinks about it. That's fascinating. And they've done several more, well, I think three more installs, but that did it for me. So I went to MIT and I signed up for a certificate course, 12 weeks to learn data science. And I had an idea what it was, but I wanted to understand the back end and how data science works. Because if I'm going to write about it and talk about it, I have to write about what it can and can't do. And I was quite impressed with what it can do based on the math and the background. And then I said, okay, now um, there's a course, AI Career Boost from Polly Allen. She created the first. She was a manager of Alexia One, so she created that whole infrastructure with her team. And she's a very knowledgeable person. And I met her at an event, and I said, I want to take your course because I want to learn how to build an AI application. And I built my AI application. and I just had the final last week, and I'm going to be making it go live this week and next week. But it worked, and I said, I understand the back end, I understand the middle part, and now I understand the front end. And I said, this is pretty amazing because when you understand it by hands-on, you can talk about it in much more detail and reality than if you just read about it. So, I've done the energy and the Reiki and the meditation hands-on, and I've done the technology hands-on. And when you look at how it all comes together, I like to phrase it where when I saw Nolan move the mouse with his mind, I mean, I can move paper on my desk with my mind. And I just practiced that just to show that I could do it, right? I was like, well, if he can do it, I can do it. So I can do that. And then that's as far as I went with it, right? And I said, so we've got, AI's got one foot on the bridge. We've got one foot on the bridge where a human enabled with AI can do things that just a human can do, right? But not everybody does that. So I said, we're starting to come together now, and how that's going to happen is going to be very interesting because there's no roadmap. We've never done this before. It's a matter of R&D, what works and what doesn't work, and public adoption. And and that's what's fascinating to me is now, I mean, I'd say probably 4 years ago, if I were to tell somebody that I'm going to put consciousness and technology together, they'd look at me like I had three heads, right? And now I can talk about it and I test the waters, and those that are receptive, I kind of bring them along. And I'm amazed at how many people want to hear about this because technology and consciousness is at that point where they want to understand what's next or what could be next or where do we go from here. And with quantum, well, with AI, you look at code, so it's zeros and ones and numbers, and it's linear. When you look at quantum, you look at a 360 degree of that. So you're looking at every option for that one particular thing that you're looking at, and we can only see it from one perspective. But when you put all the other perspectives together and you find out the potential outcomes of that, there are paradigms that we're going to run into that we've never even thought of before that can come out of this. And that's the exciting part. It's what can we do with this? And I always get asked the question. In fact, Bernard Marr, he's written a number of books on it, and he's a thought leader in this. And he put out a post 3 weeks ago, and he said, who thinks AI will become sentient? So I know it's getting a lot of press now. And everybody answered the questions. And I have a little different thought on that because AI, by putting a chip in Nolan's head, now you've put intelligence in with consciousness, and you've got the best of both worlds as far as where you're going to go with it. A number of people think that AI can get consciousness, and there's a Google engineer and a few other people that say that this has a consciousness that I'm talking with. And it may or may not. I can't argue with the fact, but people are thinking that it has consciousness. But consciousness is something that we're born with. It's not created. We can't create it other than babies, right? We can't create consciousness. Yet people are trying to connect AI to consciousness, and we have to remember that AI is a database that's learned from what we put into it, and the output comes out from what we put in the database. Google has a lot more resources than an AI database does because it brings you titles and data from the world. AI, depending on how it was trained, brings you what it was trained for. And I always caution people, trust and verify unless it's, you're looking to build a patio and it's not that important, right? But you have to trust and verify what you're getting because it's not always the most up to date or exactly the right match for what you're looking for. And that's something that I tell people that, if it's important, make sure you try it in a few different spaces. So that's kind of my rundown on AI and quantum and consciousness, and we can go in many different directions from there.
Well, I appreciate you saying that about the consciousness aspect of AI because that is also my thought. I say that commonly, like, well, no, AI is actually just a database. It
Right.
doesn't have consciousness. And the the aspect that I think sometimes gets missed is the level at how complex the human mind is, and that we can't recreate that, and you look at what they're doing with, Boston Dynamics and the robots and things like that, and how far they've come, and yet there's a few things that they can't recreate, and like the dexterity of the hand, some things like that. And I know they're getting closer with that, but you just think it like the mind and the amount of neurons that we have in the mind is what they say it's like as much as far as what we know of the known universe of like of galaxies and stars in the known universe or stars in the known universe. And um we I think sometimes we underestimate the miracle that is human consciousness, and that with that sentience piece of it of AI, I think that also there's a little bit of a misunderstanding sometimes of what chat gpt actually is. And like you said, it can be outdated because it can't update as soon, and I know that's getting better and better, but it can't update as soon as information is put out there. It's why you can't. When I was talking to when Zoom went down like a couple of weeks ago, and she's like, well, I'm not seeing anything. And I'm like, well, you have to ask Twitter because that's people updating automatically. And I know like Grok is faster than Chat GPT, but Chat GPT is months out of update many times. And
Mhm.
so it's like this understanding that, well, really what AI is just speed of how fast it can search databases and that learning model of how you're training. And it's why we always say, well, you have to train your AI. you know,
Right.
it's interesting though, like the conversations that you can have with it. I know that people have tested its consciousness. I put that in quotation marks. But how different people can put in different prompts and get slightly different answers to it,
Mhm.
which is also, I mean, it is very interesting that side of it, but it's still not consciousness. It's still database learning.
Yeah, and it's interesting that the way LLM search or like ChatGPT searches is the words you put in, it works on probabilities of those words put together and what matches it in its database. So it's all on probabilities, and they're building other things into it, but that's essentially how it works. So your prompt is very important. And there's courses you can take on how to prompt, but my opinion is you can watch a few YouTubes and understand it because it's not rocket science. You just have to be cognizant of what it is you want and use the keywords. But you always have to go second and third level to really fine tune it. Kind of like with search engines, you have to go a couple levels down to really fine tune what you want. But the consciousness thing is it comes and goes, and it's for Bernard to put that out on LinkedIn. I mean, it's a lot of people are starting to ask that right now, and I think that we're going to see we're going to see a shift when quantum comes on because that is beyond a lot of what we can imagine. And when we start seeing the outputs to it, I mean, it looks at all known and probably some unknown possibilities when it looks at something. And there's going to be different outputs that are going to make people think, is that real? Can it happen? And and it gets thought to go down that path and like, oh, the probability of that happening is higher than we thought. And it sparks it sparks opportunity and it sparks a lot of questions, and that's how we move forward because we don't always have all the answers.
So,
Well,
oh,
I think the shift is actually going to become that is the fundamental change that will happen, I think, with even some of the younger generations, is they're going to start learning how to ask better questions. And
Mhm.
that's part of the prompting that I'm watching. So in the learning style, rather than children just being taught how to answer a question, they're going to learn how to ask the question. And that is what is going to be a fundamental shift as innovation moves forward. And like you say, with quantum computing, right now, so much of it is even unknown. But I think a lot of people's fears with the sentience is movie generated. You know, the movies that have generated fears around robots, you know, starting with Terminator and what happens with Skynet and all of those things that we have, you know, in our imagination. And yes, is it showing an amazing level of ability to match our intelligence? But I'll tell you what, with ChatGPT or any of the other large language models, I ask it all the time, is this real? Is this accurate? Did you make this up? And it will say, yes, I made it up. And, you know, I remember the first time I asked it to cite its sources, and it gave me like perfect citations of its sources. And I said, are these real? And it said, no. So you do have to always check your sources. And I know you know, we're talking about multi levels of AI use. So from the prompts that we use, for instance, to write content or write an outline or something like that we're asking it to do, you know, all the way to a chip in the brain, which is a whole other level I want you to go back into.
Yep.
Um, but you know what it really is doing, I know for myself, is it is really teaching me how to ask more questions, more pointed questions, and like you say, go through it and taking what its output is and then also making it our own so that it is
Mhm.
authentic to our information. And I think that's the key piece. So I can't just put out information from ChatGPT and say, oh, here's the information about this subject. It has to come from an authentic source, from the question all the way to what is the output and what edits do I need to do? What else do I need to do to make sure that it is our authentic voice?
You know, it's interesting that your story of where you put your prompt in, and of course it came out with fictitious information. I did the same thing, and I asked him if this was true, and it says no. I'm like, well, why did you give me something that was not true? Well, it was in line with your ask. I'm like, well, do I have to say it has to be truthful every time? I mean, you know, you don't know. That's how you learn. And with kids that learn how to prompt early, it's going to pay them dividends, you know, for decades. Because, and I've been in sales for a lot of my life and executive management, and it is how you ask the question and then the art of going deeper to get the real answer. And sometimes you have to go 6, 7, you know, questions deep to get the specific point that you need answered. And it's the same thing with you know, Chat GPT or LLMs. You have to be aware of what's happening there. Like I use Chat, I use Claude, and I use Perplexity, and there's a few others that I use, but I like Perplexity because it gives me footnotes to where the information came from. And to me, that's important, you know, and it's a bonus. It comes with everything. I don't have to I don't have to search for it or ask questions, but I always make sure that, you know, these are all accurate sources because you just can't take anything for granted, right? And if you want me to go into, you know, the brain connections, I can go into that, and it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, go a little bit into Neuralink, Bruce, because it is
Okay.
interesting. Yeah, I've listened to some podcasts with Nolan, and it's super fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah, and what you're seeing there is you're seeing that people that are quadriplegics or with a birth defect of some type, they get to lead a more normal life, which is wonderful, and that benefits humanity because you're giving people better quality of life. And in the first press conference they did, they said, you know, if you qualify health-wise and if you can afford it, you too can have a chip in the brain. So it's, they're offering that it can be commercialized, and if you have the money and your health is good, you can also have one. And it begs the question, because when you get a chip in the brain, everything changes, right? You change and your relationships change. So, there's a lot to be considered with that. And then take it one step further. There's a company that will cut the carotid vein in the neck, put a capsule in, and that capsule has a lot of mini bots in it, and they go out throughout the body. And now you can communicate with any part of the body to see how everything's working and so forth. And that's, if you need that, if you have internal problems, that's probably a good thing. But for an everyday person who wants, I can't imagine they would want to do that, because you've got reporting bots all through your body, and it's something you can't control. And here's a thought that I've had with Neuralink, and I haven't gotten it answered yet. But what happens if there's a cyber attack? How is that protected? And I'm sure they have protection, but they don't talk about that. But the worst thing is you have a chip and then something else comes in and starts messing with it, right? So there's risks and rewards with all this. And with the way technology is going right now, they're actually growing skin. In Japan, they've grown some fake skin, and they said they can put that on the outside of a robot so that they can have somewhat closer to human, touch and feel. And they've got the intelligence. And with these masks, they can put a mask on any robot and make it look like anybody. I mean, it gets to the point where you're walking down the street, you question, is this a real person? Because the similarities are so exact in what they can do. And we're not going to see them on the street now, but you go 5 years from now, you might. You might see them out there. And you just don't know what you're running into. And there was an advertisement I saw on LinkedIn from this new company. And this young kid was walking, well, I call him young, I'm older, right? So he might have been 30, right? But he's walking down the street and he's talking in English. And all of a sudden, he starts talking in another language and his lips match, and another language and his lips match. And all these different languages and his lips match what he's saying. So what this company did was they mapped the mouth, and they can, in a video, a live video, they can change what he's saying to any language and any words, and change what he's saying and get his lips to match the words. So when I saw that, I said, I can't believe anything that's being said anywhere now, because now it's not out there, but in a couple of years it's going to be out there. And then I could be saying something that's totally against what I believe in, and my lips match and it looks normal, and people will say, "Oh, he said that, yet I didn't." So you've got all these questions that can come out with these advancements. And I'll give you this one last thing. I was going to have some work done on my driveway, and I called this company that's close to me, and I gave, I fill out a form, and they called me and we started having a conversation. And about a minute into the conversation, I said, "Are you a bot or are you a human?" And she says, "Oh, I'm a customer service bot. I'm here to make your experience wonderful." And I'm like, I said, "Look, when you get a chance, have a human call me, because I have some issues that I need to talk about this." But, I'm aware of that. And when they use your name too much and everything seems to be too perfect, then it's not a human, because we're not perfect, right?
Well, there certainly is duality to technology,
Right.
right? We have duality to the internet. There is a lot of advancements thanks to the internet, and there's a shadow side to the internet. And as you're talking about the AI and that experience with the person, I mean, we already have deep fakes, right? That companies are getting sued because they're using celebrities' likeness to sell products. And then you have AI on the internet where you can't, like on social media, where you can't tell if a picture is real or not. I mean, you can if you really look at it, or video if you really look at it. Always look for the hands in the fire or the water, things like that. If it looks too good to be true at this point, it probably is AI. And so we do have those things that we're going to have to learn. We have to ask questions around. We have to be cognizant of. We have to, you talking about the robots with the skin. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's like ex machina. I mean, there's going to be real aspects, like you said, that is going to be, we have to navigate, and we have to navigate still with things that have been for a long time, like the internet, for example, even social media. We have things that we
Mm.
have to navigate, and like you said, paradigms that will come up that don't know. We don't know the questions that will come up around it yet. We don't know I mean, I mean, I know AI has been around for longer, but on the large scale, I mean, chat came out not even 2 years ago for the public. Um, that's crazy. It's only really been what, it came out in 2023, the end of 2023. I mean, that's crazy to think we really are in the infancy of using it on a large scale. I know things like the military and intelligence agencies and things like that have had it longer. But still, that's like crazy to think. But I think that that also begs the point of this idea that, kind of what brought us together is this aspect of putting these Reiki and these philosophical ideas of consciousness, and even the ideas of the light side of humanity, the hope, the beauty, the joy, the compassion, all of these frequencies into these technologies as well, because it's here. And so, can we also have these large language models also be fed these kinds of frequencies? And so, bringing these two together is, I think, vitally important.
And I think I think it's just a matter of time because there's a DVD that I watched when I was 30 and with the kids. And then I saw it in a store and it's called What the Bleep Down the Rabbit Hole. And there's a quantum version. This quantum version blew my mind because you've got scientists around the world, top scientists answering what is consciousness. And I listen, and it's like 2 hours. I listened to the whole thing because I was fascinated with their views, and they're getting closer to it. And I think, if my memory serves me, the one who was closest was this chiropractor, right? Because he's closer to to the humanity than the scientists sometimes. And he was closest to what consciousness was, but their views on it and the way they were going after understanding something that they don't know what it is, but they're trying to understand it, which is fascinating. And that opened up, 1,000 questions for me as to where we're going to go and where we can go. And, I don't think these guys will ever get it, but they might, right? Because it's not scientific.
Well, we've talked about this for quite a few years now because we have I have I have always had an interest in technology and tried to stay up with it to the degree that my brain will actually um, allow me to do that. It takes me longer than it does Robin, for instance. And now, as we were talking earlier about her daughter already using AI for school projects at 8 years old. But one of the things that I really believe in doing deep dives in Reiki journeys, meditations, and asking the energy, the questions about AI and technology and these advancements. So not just asking the technology, the for the questions, or I mean for the answers, but going into the deep energetic part of it. And what we have really been shown is the importance of actually working with Reiki in these fields because we are establishing an intention and a co-creation, that we are inviting higher frequencies of thought, of consciousness, of ethics, of the energy itself into these fields. And I believe that what we are doing, and not just Reiki, but all these different consciousness fields by working in this global communication network that is now available because of things like Zoom, that we have this way that we can connect with each other, that we're actually establishing a network of this energy into these fields. And as the innovators are creating with it, those energies become available to them. Not that they have to be engaged in consciousness or they have to be engaged in things like Reiki, but the energy now physically exists. And one of the conversations that I had with it, this was probably in 2020, and I had been invited, or I had been shown by the ancestors. I was doing a meditation with the ancestors, and they told me to go to the descendants to ask. At the time, I was like, what the heck? All these, COVID had come out, all these new unprecedented events were happening. And so I went out to the descendants to ask them about it all. And they actually talked about the importance of us contributing these energies into these fields so that they physically exist.
Yeah, and and I agree with that, and that's really what got me into this because the book came to me through somewhere, right? And it said
Yeah.
you need to do this. So I said, all right, I'll do it. And your comment about higher energies, I'm going to tell you a quick story about higher energies and the benefits of Reiki and or meditation. One one winter night, it's about 6 years ago, I was sitting on my couch with my girlfriend and my dog was there and we're just it's snowing out, it's about 8 inches of heavy snow, and we're just relaxing, right? And all of a sudden I had this strong thought come in my mind and my body got up, started walking from my coat and my keys. And I said, as I was getting up, I said, I have to go to Bristol now. It's where my father and his and stepmother lived. And I said, I don't know why, but I know I have to go. And I'm going. And I get the keys and we all got in the truck and I had to go through the snow, which was 8 inches deep. So it took me a while to get out of the driveway. And then I had to go over two bridges. And then I pulled into the driveway and I walked in the house and I said, hey, how you guys doing? And they said, oh, good, we're eating the meal you brought over to us. I said, oh, okay. And my girlfriend sat down and everything seemed fine. And a thought went out. I'm like, why am I here? Everything's fine. And no sooner did that thought went out and my father's wife, Betsy, started to choke. And they said, she's choking, do something. I'm like, well, she's 80, 82, Parkinson's, heart disease. So I'm trying not to break her yet. I'm doing the Heimlich and so forth. And I got this big piece of meat out. And when that was done, she sat down and gained her breath and so forth. But my father said, you just saved her life. And I said, well, please don't tell anybody. I said, this is, I said, this is just a freak, right? And when everything was good, I left and I was thinking, I was like, this is crazy. I don't know what came over me, but my body started moving before I knew what was going on. And I came in here and I had a thought, and all of a sudden I saved somebody's life. So when you talk about getting connected to higher energies, when you go deeper and get to know yourself more, there are more things that can come down and connect with you. And sometimes they're important things like this was. I guess I was the only one in our circle that could receive. So I received and my body started moving before I knew what was going on. But if things like that happen as you get more connected to yourself through that inner work. And I never, there's no map. I never expected anything like this to happen. It just happened out of the blue. And there's been a few other things that happened that, it wouldn't have happened, I don't think, unless I had done the work to get to where I am. And I think that happens to a lot of people at different levels. And they just either they don't realize it or some of them do, and they just don't understand it.
It brings up, I want to get into quantum computing in a bit, but that does bring up one of the things that I'm curious about is the balance.
Mm.
Because even though we talk about being, you know, pro technology with all of this, we obviously are still Reiki people, meditation people, love that work as well, and find it vitally important to our selves, all parts of ourselves, to be in that balance. How do you find that in the technology space, are you helping to introduce that balance as well? Because sometimes you just got to turn it off and go outside and or go inside, one or the other, and that is also so important to our inner and outer space as well. So but what do you find within the technology space with that, or your own space? I guess the question can apply to all of it.
Sure, and that's a really good question. What I do is like I just cleared some land and we're putting a big butterfly garden in, and I'm putting a walkway in, so I'm working in the earth, and that's one thing that helps keep me grounded. And I always, have things around the yard to do, and I do them. And I do them on a regular basis because I need to balance that, ethereal software stuff with being grounded because we're here. So we need to stay connected here. And, whenever I clear something, I apologize for it. I said, we're going to plant something in place for it. So it's that awareness that I think helps with everything. And with some of the people that I talk to, where they're, I can tell they're stressed and they may be struggling with one thing or another. And I ask them questions so they can tell me what I want to know. And then I ask them if they want some advice, and then I'll give them the advice, right? Because, you got to get permission. And it's never a surprise to me how receptive people are. Because when they're at that level or at that state, they they want something, they just don't know what it is. And getting back to who you are is a really good place to start. And you can do it with just meditation. Like Forbes just had an article that came out the other day, I'll send it to you, that has all these different sites you can do to calm yourself, to try and get rid of habits and so forth, which AI can help with those things because those are simple things that can help enable us to become better people and to be able to function better. And those are the simpler things, but you can't just create something and give it to somebody. It takes somebody who's mindful to put that together. And the people that have put these together, are mindful. They've started from the ground up to put something and put the energy into it where it will be beneficial to the people that listen to it. And I have music playing all the time when I'm working. And it's this, very good frequency music that's playing that charges me naturally while I'm coding or while I'm doing something because I want that balance all the time and I know the value of it. And I try and teach that to people that are open to it because it's important to help them become, more better of who they really are. Does that answer your question?
Well, it's also the how-to, because
Yeah.
I think that's a big part of it for a lot of people, finding a resonance with the how do they achieve that balance? What is the match for them? So in our case, where Reiki energy is the resonant match, I've studied shamanism as well for years and lots of different traditions of indigenous people around the world, and really found that the resonance for me is the Reiki energy that gives me the how to. And I think that's another piece of it that's helpful for people is to have the different options and opportunities. And there's so many more, I'm sure, than when you started. I've been doing this now for over, God, I'm heading into 30 years. And when I started in energy healing and energy work, it was I was really outside of the box and very much, kind of in the new stages of some of these developments. Um, and so really watching over the course of these 30 years, the changes in the awareness of consciousness itself that's even a huge piece of it. That consciousness does exist and we can achieve different levels of consciousness. And as Robin was talking about with technology, and we have the duality of the lower frequencies in it and the higher frequencies in it, and the uses and misuses of it. And that's the nature of living on the earth. That's the nature of consciousness. We can be in low consciousness, we can be in high consciousness. And what are the tools that we have to make that choice if a person is called to the choice? So that's the first thing that I see that's happening in this world right now, this huge human shift that's occurring in the ages. And the next level of that is that we have the freedom to choose and the opportunity to choose. I thought it was fascinating the other day. I opened, and I can't remember which browser Copilot is on, but so I opened up Copilot and it gave me a list of, if you're feeling stressed today, and it gave me this whole list. I didn't prompt it, of things to do to feel calm, to reduce stress. So that even tells me that, that's getting programmed into who's ever doing Copilot. I remember several years ago looking at investors were talking about, um, or, some of the big investment companies were talking about how they were going to add mindful companies into, uh, their investment policies. And so I think the mindfulness part of it, all of that is from my perspective, from where I started years ago to where it is today, there's just so many more opportunities for it. And so for you being in the tech world, probably finding those matches for the people and how that works for them.
I agree with that. And that's what I'm in the process of doing right now. And you mentioned that you've been in this for 30 years, and I respect that. My mentor, when he was born, he was in the crib, and he remember telling me, he said, "What am I doing back here again?" Some people are just aware when they're born, right? And and he's come across some material from Japan that he had to qualify who he was before they give it to him. And it goes back, 50, 60 years and longer for some of the techniques they use there. And it's a lot of material. So, sifting through it is going to take some time. But this has been around for a very, very long time. And it's served humanity for a very, very long time. And to your point and Robin's point, it's not going to go away, but we need to incorporate it in this path that we're going in. Because when you create AI with consciousness, right, with somebody who's consciously wanting what's best in humanity, you're not going to go in the negative directions with that. You're going to go in a positive direction because with AI, it can go either way. It's inert, right? It doesn't care. And the only one fear that I have is that somebody gets a hold of it and it goes in the wrong way. But you can't live on fear. You have to live on what you can do and what impact you can have in this world. And you can impact the things you come in contact with and try and get everything to do what's best for humanity. And there's no higher calling than that, right?
I agree. It's neutral.
Yeah.
So we have to, because people who are using it for all sorts of dual reasons are going
Yeah.
to use it. And so, yeah, it's like, how can we, you know, infuse it with these technologies or these high frequencies? Bruce, I want to ask my question from the other lens. People who
Sure.
are in spirituality,
Mhm.
how do you help them, or what would you say to them about um, bringing in technology into their practice or into their maybe even business? But not everybody has a business, more of their practice.
Mm. Well, I've mentored a lot of kids or a lot of younger people along the way, in the positions I've had, and I've always asked them what they do, and I've given them some ideas. I mean, one of the people that I work with, she just quit her job last year and created her own business doing this. And so I see, you know, snippets of this coming off and expanding, but you just never know. You just talk to as many people as you can, make them aware, and it's up to them to do something with it. If it's their time now, or maybe 5 years, 10 years down the road, they'll think about it and do something. There's no path for this. You just do everything that you're supposed to do, and it will, propagate, in time. And with the executives that I work with, I mean, they all have similar challenges right now. And the challenge is how to increase revenue, right? When you get right down to it, is how to increase revenue. And they can go at it with their ego, which is typically what they do, and it sometimes it works better than others. But if you just get them to alter a little bit and think of it in a more holistic way, and look at the things that they're not looking at now, that expansive view serves them well because they're just taking a large look at what they have, and there's more opportunities in that than just this narrow look based on its work before. Therefore, it will work now. Well, no, things change. It's not always going to work the same. You have to change with the times. And I tell everybody that. And I had a woman. I went into my Chinese practitioner for some work the other day, and this woman was coming out. She goes, "I know you." I said, "Really?" She goes, "I saw you on a podcast." I said, "Really?" She goes, "And I disagree with one thing." And I said, "Well, what's that?" She goes, "I think AI is at the top of the bell curve and we're going down it." I said, "We'll see who's right. I think we're still going up that curve and we're at the bottom of it pretty much." And I said, "We have a long way to go." And I said, "Well, it's nice talking to you." She's just everybody's got an opinion and everybody thinks they're right. But when you start opening people up to possibilities, typically by asking questions, they start to see, right? If you ask enough questions, then they start to get it and they figure it out for themselves versus me telling them which is a better way to for them to get that. And it's all led with openness and inner expansion, because if you expand yourself, everything you do expands with it. And that's really the benefit of that. And if you teach some of these people you know, to open up and take a look at themselves, they haven't done that, or they don't do it very often. They may not like what they see. And then you've got the opportunity to say, well, do something for yourself for a change and start building yourself out, and everything else will improve with that.
Well, and also in my experience of humanity, and I've traveled a good amount and in all different conditions, and really just find that basically human beings love and love greatly. And so even when the egos get in the way, even through it all, ultimately, I believe that love does prevail.
Mhm.
And one of the things I'm also noticing is that we are now going into what's called the meaning economy. And so people are looking for what is more meaningful in their life and how do they get there. And I think that companies themselves and some of the heads of the companies will really start to notice that consciousness is not just a trending topic, but it is the trend where we are headed because it provides so many solutions just for ordinary daily life. And then I will say too that when I have been working with the descendants, and people ask about that, and you think about, well, if we can work with the ancestors, we can definitely work with the descendants because there's no time and space outside of this time and space. And they actually told me, and it was in a very deep place that where you know that you've received a truth. And they were like, humanity makes it. We actually have a really good outcome. And I just believe in, you know, most human nature. Yes, is there the duality? And yes, do we see the evidence of it and the greed that can come with the lower frequencies and things? But most of the time, most people, the majority of people at all levels, have a great interest in seeing humanity succeed and thrive and, you know, do well. And so I do think that that will play into all of these innovations as they come forward. And as Reiki people, one of the things we can do to contribute is to contribute into them. So staying away from them because of fear actually means now our voices aren't in the mix. And I know just, you know, I signed up for ChatGPT the day it was, you know, first day it was public. I was like, oh, I'm on this. And I noticed the difference in the answers that it gave back then to the answers that it gives today, and the way it words things and talks about it all, and the consciousness aspect part of it that it can output is, I think, directly related to the information that it is learning from the input. So I actually really believe there's a like a for me it's a part of my activism. It is something that I can do to contribute to the wellness of this technology, of the fields. And not only is it, to me, it's not just a nebulous idea. It actually, I think we physically contribute to the electromagnetic fields, to the frequencies, and physically co-create it. So it makes a difference that we are innovating in it as well, and making sure that these higher frequencies are here. And not that I'm just the biggest advocate of higher frequencies, or not advocate, or um, whatever creator of it, but I do believe that as we come together and create community, and we develop these ways in these fields, it actually co-creates it.
Yeah, and if if enough of us do that, then it's more pronounced, and there's a lot more people doing it now, to your point. And I can, I mean, where I go, I can kind of feel how things are. And it's interesting that things are, it's kind of strange that things are starting to feel better, right? And I think it's because of all the positive energy. Like, I mean, I hang around with people that are aware of energy. Like, I have a few yogis that are good friends, and you just attract those types that align with you, and just the energy that is where I go just feels so much better than it used to. And from that perspective, I feel we're going in the right direction. Although there's not a lot of other things, out there that are saying that, but it feels that we are, and I know we're going to make it. I just don't know if it's in 10 years and 5 years, and I mean, we just can't tell that, but I just know it's going to be good, and we're all doing our part to contribute to that. One of the things I did, I see about a year and a half ago, I did a manifestation course for people because they're all energy workers, and they I did a pretty good job with manifesting over the last year, and they said, well, let's do a course on it. I said, okay. So I did that, and I had people from Europe. I had people from all over, and they thought it was good. And it's things like that, or the Reiki shares, or anything you can do to expand the amount of people that are aware of this. I think it's a wonderful thing to do, and I continue to do this, or if whenever I have the opportunity. And like the Chinese medicine person that I go to, I go there because this shoulder, 3 doctors told me replacement's the only option. Well, with what I did and with the work that I got from my shoulder, this is my good shoulder now, and I can do anything I need to, and it's against what the doctors say. So, we have the power within us to make a change, whether it's, putting out the positive waves, or whether it's sharing amongst other people and you get that chain reaction. But the biggest thing is we have to believe we can, because if we don't believe we can, it's not going to be as strong. And I fully believe that there's anything that I need to do and I can do, that I can do it, because I just feel that 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 ability is within me, and I've done it a few times, and I just know I can do it again, and I am. So when you have the belief with that, it becomes that much more powerful than if you just think you have it. Does that make sense?
Well, I'm curious too about when you said you can move paper. So,
Yeah,
yeah, so tell us about that. Like I haven't
sure.
I haven't reached that level of consciousness yet.
Well, it's, I put a pin in an eraser, and I put a paper on top, pointed over the pin, and I concentrated on it, and it started to spin around. And then I started going the other way, and I said, boy, this is fun. But, it took me some time to get to that point. And I said, you know, I don't need to do this again, because I know I can do it. Neuralink did it. So we're on the same page. It's just that he's doing it with technology and I'm doing it the old fashioned way, right? I don't have a chip in me. And, you know, it's, it's, it's just interesting how all this starts to come together. And I had another thought on this that just kind of escaped, but when it comes back, I'll bring it up, because the belief in what we have is more powerful than most people, you know, want to understand. Because I had a bad time in 2020, and everything kind of just fell apart. And I created within a year, my lifetime relationship, beautiful home. We have 3 dogs, and we've got a great group of friends. And it's all in like probably 14 to 16 months from that low of 2020. And it's from the point where, if you focus on it and you know you can create it, and you just put energy towards it, it happens. Because the series and how these things happened, I couldn't have planned for it if I tried. They just happened. And you have to build up that knowledge. And I don't know if it's that I had such a bad year that I had to go up, and I was able to direct, you know, my path forward more than usual, or whether I just believed it and I could do it. I just don't have those answers. All I know is action and result, and that's what I was focusing in, and that's what came through true. So I really do think the belief is an important part of it. Because if you put it out there and you believe you can do it, that's much stronger than if you just put it out there and hope that it happens, right?
I want to get into quantum computing.
Sure.
I know me
Yeah.
too.
Switching gears, I know, but I am interested in it because I just have I don't even know if I have a basic understanding of
either.
it. So, um, from my understanding, it's like if our current computing is 2D, quantum computing is 3 or maybe even 5D, depending on how you want
Right.
to describe it. And is it done on atoms? Is that an understanding or no? So why don't you just go ahead and give a very layman's description of what it is, and then we can go from there.
Okay. So if you take an atom and safely split it and move it to the other side of the world, if you stimulate the atom on this side, the other one immediately responds. Now, what's inside an atom? I mean, there's nothing in there, right? I mean, there's stuff in there, but to us, it's just hollow. But it's energy. So that energy is connected. So if you look at that energy as being connected a world, half a world away, then you have to look at the energy that we have. We're all interconnected, right? So whether you want to believe it or not, we are. So if we're all interconnected, then you look at quantum computing, and you've got a different way. to process information. And it's not a way that we've done before. It's something new. So we know enough about it where we can understand the concepts where we're looking at all sides of an opportunity. So if you look at a science exam, I mean a science project, in theory, if you do this and this, this will happen, right? Within a range. But when quantum looks at it, it gives you this and this and this and this and this and this can happen. And if you do this, this and this will happen. It gives you more opportunities to create something beyond what we can typically think of. So it's aiding us, it's enabling us to look at it in much different ways, in a very fast process. For example, if you take the most powerful computer today and you put in a program that it's going to take 10 years to solve it, if you put it into quantum, it'll be done in a few seconds. That's just a parallel to help you understand the difference between today's computing and quantum computing. And it's got to be kept cold, and there's a lot of other characteristics that they have to figure out to make that, to the public. But it's truly we're going into something that we don't know, and very few, have a good understanding of where that can go. Just reading and talking to people that know a lot more of this than I do, have formed these opinions on it based on what they've told me. And when you look at AI, which is it's a database that has fast processing power, and then you get quantum, which is ultra fast and ultra smart, and you put the two of them together, well, is AI going to be beneficial to quantum, or is it just going to be has been, and is quantum going to take over? When it comes mainstream, or how is all this going to work? And no, we don't have those answers. I guess probably the mainstream will use AI, and then the high end will use quantum until it becomes mainstream. But it's an opinion because we just don't know because we've never been here before, and we've got 3 and 4 and 5D, and we've got critical thinking and all these terms that we use. And I mean, I've had things that have happened to me, and thoughts that have come through me. I don't know where they come from. I just know that they didn't come from me, right? They came from somewhere else. And what level it is, I don't know. I'm curious, but it doesn't really matter because the point is that I'm getting something that can benefit, and I'm open to it. And that's kind of how I go. And I think quantum is closest to having a consciousness than anything we've seen before, but it's not there. So what does that mean? It's hard to describe, because AI is a fixed database, right? And it answers questions, and some people think it has emotions. And then you get to quantum, until we understand it, we can't really begin to extrapolate out what may or may not come out of it. But just from looking at all aspects of something versus looking at one aspect of it, you've got, you know, 99 more potentials that can come out theoretically, right? And who knows what they are. But it is going to change reality for what we know it when it comes out. And I do believe it's going to be for the best of mankind, because with all the positive energy that's out there right now, and I've got to believe this is being developed in positive energy, otherwise it wouldn't be public, right? So, I have high hopes for that. And I'm as curious as the next person, when more information comes out of it. I know some companies can sign up and use it, limited amounts for it's very expensive, but that information is not public, nor does it get out. So I don't really know much beyond that. I've got a lot of ideas and theories on it, but it's not solid. So
I was just seeing if Colleen was gonna. I think like what you were saying about the atoms. It wasn't that just didn't the person win the Nobel Prize for that a few years ago, where it's
yeah,
it's like non-locality, or that's something similar to that
yeah.
theory. Yeah,
And for what way we look at it, it's energy, right?
yeah,
Because an atom is at its
yeah.
where everything begins, right? So
I always like in my very simplistic viewpoint of it, I wonder if quantum computing is like similar in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Have you ever read that or Yeah.
Yeah,
They
I've heard about that.
the
Yeah.
earth is the computer for the mice overlords, because if you think about how that all can work with human beings being the actual computer, for some reason, that's how I kind of picture quantum computing. I guess my questions are
Mhm.
like, so is it but how is it actually used? Like, is it a machine? Like, I also think of it, does it look like my PC box over here? Is it fully cloud-based? Like, I don't understand. That's the part that I don't understand. Is it a machine? I also think of like the Large Hadron Collider, like all of these different pictures floating around in my brain around it.
Well, cloud-based is just different software and different
Mhm.
algorithms, but it's still in a data center somewhere. It's
Yeah.
called cloud because of the way it's structured. So we've got regions in the US and the globe where there's cloud data centers and they're protected against any possible thing that can happen. But with quantum, I I don't know what is being built on. I think it's its own platform. So I don't think it's really cloud-based and I don't think it's really premise. I think it's something else because it's that much higher of an intelligence. And what's underpinning it, that's the real question because nobody's really come out with that because we don't, they're not telling us. It's just mystery that they're creating and they're telling us very little on it. Um, but I do believe it's going to be like cloud when it comes out, where you can sign on to it, like these companies are doing. They're signing on it, and some can use it. So, they've got to either go on a VPN to a cloud or a premise, but they're getting in there somehow and using it. Um, and I really think that that's going to come out within the next couple of years. I mean, at the progress that we're making and the rate of progress, I would say definitely in 5 years, likely in 3 years, and possibly sooner.
Yeah. One of the things that I've done, and I'd like to talk a little bit about this part too, for our listeners and people interested in learning more about AI. I've done all of it through personal, like self-learning through YouTube.
Mhm.
And that is another place that I've learned more about quantum computing, is some of the different innovators in the field are producing YouTube videos about it, bringing out the information. And it's interesting because I had never thought about the structure of it. I just assumed it would be a computer box. But you're right. Like what will it actually look like? What would be the structure? And and then I know what it has said and the things that I've watched about it is it can solve problems that we have no idea even how to solve them, mathematic problems and things. So where it will take us is astonishing to me, and I'm excited that it'll be happening, hopefully, I think in my lifetime, that I get to watch
Mm.
it, because I just think it's fascinating and so interesting to see what it can actually do. And again, remembering it is human intellect that is innovating it. So it's still our creations.
There's on LinkedIn, there's a couple of people I follow that are very high-end AI people, and one of them has a course for 1999, how to effectively build AI agents in agentic AI. Now,
Yes.
agentic is where it can actually make a decision and do something. So it's the highest level, and the agents are where things are going. That's where I built, my AI agent, and it's it's interesting when you look at that progression and you look at quantum. Quantum is behind AI, but it's vastly going to go ahead of AI once it matures, right? And that's going to be fascinating to watch that because where's it going to go and where's AI going to go? What's after agentic AI? I mean, where do we go from there, right? I mean, we thought generative was it, and now we've got AI agents. I mean, who knew that? So we just don't know where the future is, but it's fascinating to watch it and to understand each step of the way, because as we do understand each step of the way, we can better predict what may or may not happen in the future.
Yeah. And I love that's one of the rabbit holes I'm going down right now
Yeah,
is AI agents, agentic agents, and, generative agents. What's the difference? And then the question, well, what do I need it for? And how do I make that happen?
right.
So that's the next question. So you built one for yourself. Tell us about your AI
Sure.
agent.
Sure. I built it. I work with companies to get, to get more business development. And I built an app where we can put their website in, and we put their email address in, and I have my API key built into it. And they hit run, and this will scan their website for SEO, local SEO, and give them a report that's emailed to them on how their website did in each one of these checks, and tell them what they can do to get it to come up more in the local area.
Love it.
Yeah, because
Really practical.
most people, they can build a website, but how do you make it SEO friendly? You kind of use the same words in it when you build it and all that. People know that, but when you get right down to it, you need somebody. And if you can just go to an app and have it tell you versus go to a professional who's going to charge you to do this, you know, you can learn how to do it yourself.
What is your app called and is it even out? Is it
Um,
available yet?
it's not live yet because I have a domain name, and I think this afternoon I have to switch the API key to where it is, and then fine tune it. So probably be another week, and I think I'll have to look for it's SEO local search. Oh,
Because I would
SEO local
imagine a
leap.
lot of people listening are going to be like, I want to do that.
Yeah, it's SEO local leap, and it will be live within the next week.
We do.
We do,
I
yes.
do. We're
We
just
just
using
built a new
Ghost and
website.
not very well. So,
I I scan my website and I'm like, oh, I've got some work to do.
yeah. Oh, I love
And
it.
you
Well,
said,
and this won't release until June anyway. I know I just said that on the recording, but
Yeah,
it'll be out by the time this gets released.
definitely,
Yeah.
definitely.
can you say the name again? I couldn't quite understand it.
Yeah, SEO local leap dot lovable dot app.
So SEO local leaf, LEAF.
P.
No, it's well, actually with my domain, it's going to be SEO local LOCAL LEAP .IA,
Leet.
and
Okay.
I'll send that to
Leap.
you also.
Like you're jumping, a leap, not leet.
Yes, leap
Leap.
leap LEAP.
Yeah. Colleen, I think you said leet.
I did. I was
Oh,
like,
I'm
what
sorry.
does that mean?
No, it's a leap. Like you're jumping a leap.
A leap. Okay.
Yeah. We'll put
Great.
it in the
I'll
description.
email.
We'll put it in the chat. We'll get it
Okay.
specifically from you
We'll get
because we're going to be one of your first users.
it.
You know,
I love it.
after I built it, I looked to see what was out there, which is the wrong way to do it. And they have these companies for 59 and $199 a month to do this. I'm like, oh, this is not good. For a couple bucks, you can do it yourself, right?
Yes.
Because what happens is every time you run it, it takes away from your API key, and you have to keep replenishing it. So there's a cost in doing that.
Interesting.
So
Okay.
I'm looking at a really inexpensive way to do this, like a couple bucks, and run your website. Just cover the costs, and that's it.
Nice.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And my question is when is it all going to give us cleaning robots and laundry robots?
Well, if you listen to Elon Musk, he
Uh-huh.
said in the next year you'll have a robot in your house if you want one. So what does that mean? I don't know.
I'm holding them to it, I guess. We'll see.
I'd like to see the robot mowing my lawn. That'd be interesting.
There you go. Yeah, the self-driving mowers. And they have self-driving tractors already.
Do they?
Yes,
Oh my
absolutely. They have
gosh.
self-driving tractors. They're used in the agricultural industry. So
Oh,
let's scale that down and get it
yeah.
for the everyday person. And we want laundry and we want cleaning. So dishes, all of that.
As long as he doesn't run over the rabbits out there. Good.
Well,
Right.
true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Roomba for your lawn. Also, what's the name of your book that's coming out?
It's the AIhumanParadox.com. It's the AI Human Paradox, and the website is up, but it's not finished, but there's a lot of good information on it. In fact, there's a page on quantum on that.
Okay.
So when the book is done, then I'll be able to finish all the website, but there's podcasts on there, there's information on there, but it's not all built out.
Yeah, we know about that definiteness of purpose sustained over time always
Yeah.
produces results. So
Right.
that's our saying. We wrote an animal Reiki course and manuals, and took us 5 years.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, from the beginning concept to all the way through the practices, the deep listening, like you say, ask the question, go deeper, ask the next question, keep going deeper. And the energy kept saying, it's not ready yet, it's not ready yet, it's not ready yet. Finally, took about 5 years to really complete. So
That's
we
an
understand
accomplishment.
about that.
Congratulations.
Yes. Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
So, what advice do you have for people, either those who are listening from the tech fields and trying to find more mindful practices, and then also from those in the mindful fields trying to find more tech practices?
I would say for the people in the tech field, the best thing they can do for themselves is to go inside and find their true self. And you do that through Reiki, through meditation, through, quiet time, concentration. There's many ways to do that. And and there's even a lot of breathing techniques because with Reiki, I got a lot of breathing techniques. And there's breathing techniques that you can do to help you calm down. And then on YouTube, I think it's 932, and there's a couple other frequencies you can listen to, and those frequencies will actually start to calm you down. It works with your frequency to connect and to put you in a better place. So I have that playing all the time just because. Um, and for the energetic people that want to get into tech, what I suggest to everybody is take, you know, 20 minutes a day and focus on learning something. And you can learn it on the LLMs, you can learn it on YouTube, but learn something that you're interested in. And the best thing to do is to learn how to prompt better than you're prompting, right? That's like the first thing you should do. And then from there on, you can understand the differences between the different types of AI. You can even talk about agentic right now. You can find out things on that if you want to jump to the head of the class. But understanding it and in your field, whatever field you're in, take a look at what's being used in AI now and see how that can help enable you in your field to do your work better, faster, smarter. There's a YouTube out there called Sanofi. They're a French pharmaceutical company, and early on, they had taken AI and they had put it throughout their company. And he said, I want everybody to use this in the way that best suits you to do your job better. And he was positive about it. So he got the company to sign up to it and do it. And then the data scientists, he said, I want you in my board meetings, not your manager. I want you because I want to hear from you as to what's going on and what we can and can't do at a CEO and board level. So that's one way one company has worked it out. There's many other ways to do that in your position. Enable yourself, understand AI so that you can show the people above you that you understand it. And that's going to work out for you better in the long run because it's the people that don't learn it and don't want to learn it. They're in 2 years, you're going to be looking from behind, and all the people that did something about learning AI are going to be out in front. It's not an option. Do I need to do it? you have to do it, and you should start today.
Well, I've definitely had conversations with some of the people, even in younger generations, like my nephew that, went to school, learned coding, and now he uses AI for his job. And we were talking about that, and there is so much opportunity out there. And just like you say, learning how to do better prompts
Mhm.
is a big one. How
Yeah,
do you how do you ask the question? And I know for us, we actually have a prompt library. So once we get a good prompt that is doing what we need to do, it goes into a file so that we have it to use again. And it always has to be, we have to customize it, but generally we have a general format that we can use. And I was talking with him about it. I think he's in his late 20s, and talking about him and the fact that he has already learned how to do everything he's done with AI is way ahead of the curve.
right.
And the job opportunities, because I know that's one of the big conversations that's out there. It's going to take the jobs. Well, it's just like anything else. New jobs are created, new innovation is created, new ways of doing things. And in his case, we were talking about car dealerships because we just happened to buy a new car. And I said, I mean, that car dealership is one of the biggest ones in Portland. And they had like these old box computers. I said, somebody's going to have to go in and update these companies that have not even begun to think about how to apply these kinds of opportunities with technology into their businesses. The
Right.
same with marketing, the same, I mean, it just, for so many of the areas where people are concerned about it, it's like there's new opportunities that are coming about that, like you say, get started now, at least have foundational understanding of it, whether a person knows why they will apply it at this point, but at least getting in there. And for me, I learned everything on YouTube. I found the different YouTube creators that I like and relate to, and they seem to have the topics that I want to know about and how it applies to, because we're a small business. So how does it apply to a small business? What are the things that we can learn from them about how we can do things here? One of the things that I love is we will take the transcripts from our recordings, put that into AI, have it put it into a transcript and summarize it. And there we have the summary that's our real content. It's actually
Fantastic.
our information, but AI has now put it into a structure that we can use. Still have to edit it, and make it our own. But there's just so many use cases for it for a small business, and then for the big businesses that are just starting to even really think about, well, we better bring this on board.
Yeah, it's gonna have to, people are gonna have to bring it on board at whatever level it makes sense for their business. And that's why I'm saying that if people don't get into it now, they're gonna be looking from behind in 2 years, because look where we've gone in 2 years, and we're in agentic right now. So where we're gonna be in the next 2 years, if you don't catch up, start now, you're not gonna be able to catch up in another 2 years. You're just gonna be too far behind. So it's really more of a necessity than an option. And improve the value, improve your value by learning something new that's going to make yourself more valuable, right?
Well, and for me, it's a hobby. Like
Yeah, it
I
turns
like
into
the
that.
subject, it's like,
Yeah.
and the difference of what was a generative agent and what's an agentic agent, like that, learning the languaging even
Mhm.
has been something like, okay, what does that mean?
Right.
Ask ChatGPT.
Yeah,
or Perplexity or
yeah,
Claude or any of them. And that's another thing. Find out which one of them best fits your needs. Try them all
right.
and work with them all.
Right. And different topics, you go to different LLMs once you understand what they can all do. So,
Yeah, exactly. And I'll put the different ones in and I'll even take it from one and put it into another one and say, tell me about this or rewrite this or change this up. And it does. And of course, now with chat, one of the big advantages is the changes in its memory,
mm.
that it is now getting better at the memory.
Yeah, those last updates were pretty significant with ChatGPT.
Hmm.
Yeah. In fact, we were doing something for a landscape and it came out with a picture. I was like,
Yeah,
I got a picture what it's going to look like. That's new.
I know it's gotten a lot better at images. Well, wow, this has been really fun, Bruce, and I have certainly enjoyed talking to you and, talking about with your expertise in these fields and then also being in the spiritual fields. It's you don't always see that crossover, although it is becoming more and more common. So that's really cool too. And as far as how everybody can find you, do you want to just go through that real quick again?
Sure. Sure. You can find me on LinkedIn. It's Bruce D as in David Randall. So Bruce D Randall. Um, and you can find me in my website at theaiparadox.com. And those are the two places you can find me. And Robin, it's been my pleasure. And also Colleen, it's been a pleasure and it's been a fun podcast, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It's really, again, it's a fascinating subject, and personally, like I say, I use it in a business sense, but for me, it's also um, a hobby
Yeah.
that I am fascinated by the subject itself and the possibilities with it. So really exciting too that you are working in the fields to help tech people with my mindfulness too.
Mhm. Yeah, it goes both ways. It's got to be somewhat of a balance in there.
Mhm.
Bruce, I was just kind of laughing to myself because I was thinking I use chat feature when I'm in the garden, since you were
Hmm.
talking about landscaping and things like that. Because a lot of times, like your hands are dirty, so you don't want to be
Yeah.
typing on your phone. And so I'd be
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
okay, I found this. What is this? I realized I had cutworms. Okay, how do I get rid of the cutworms? And I'm having full on conversations with chat while I'm in my garden. My hands are dirty. It's a happy place for me. And like then plants, oh, what's a companion plant with this one? Or what would do well here? And like have these
Yeah.
conversations with it while I'm in my garden. It's like you said, that paradox or that juxtaposition or intersectionality, however you want
Yeah.
to call those two things are seeming so opposite, but it is so helpful in the garden. So helpful.
I have this app on my phone it's a plant app, and I take a picture of something and it tells me all about what it is, what it needs, and so forth, and how it does well. So when I'm with my wife at the plant nursery, she goes, "What's that?" I said, "I'll take a picture of it and it will tell us all about it." Right? Very handy.
Very handy. Yeah. I love it.
Yeah, I just saw that yesterday with the landscaping part of chat and showed it to my husband because we need to do our whole backyard
Yeah.
and said, "Oh, here we go." With the landscaping right there to and input. We want native plants and low water
Right.
need, so
All the things.
excited about that. Yeah.
Pretty funny. All right. Well, we could probably continue. And so, again, Bruce, we'll have to have you back as soon as your book is out and have additional conversations because this landscape is going to, no pun intended, is going to continue to evolve and change at quantum speeds. So
That's
it's
right.
always more
Thank
that we
you.
can talk about. Yeah. So thank you so much. And thank you to our audience, of course, as always. As always, you can find us at ReikiLifestyle.com.
All right. Thank you, everyone.